Hi, my name is Mario Mihalcic. I'm an international student advisor here at the Bechtel International Center at Stanford University. This is the Maintaining Legal Status session for our incoming fall 2021 students. I thank you very much for joining us from wherever you are. Hopefully you've made it into the US. I'm a huge fan of U2 and Bono, and sometimes Bono would open their shows by asking, what time is it in the world? So for the last year plus now, we've been meeting with you, meeting with our international students from all over the world, and we're looking forward to having you mostly back on campus now. Having said that, let's go ahead and get this presentation started. I will share my screen with you. And there we go. Begin slideshow. So this is the Maintaining Your Legal Status for our fall 2021 quarter. This presentation will be an introduction to the Bechtel International Center, some of the services that we provide. Then we'll drill down into actually maintaining your legal status and what you need to do that. We will review your immigration documents, so hopefully you'll have those in hand, and if not, you can pause the video and get those documents and then review them with me. We'll talk about what duration of status means, and then we'll look at travel and US re-entry on the student visa. We'll go over a little bit about how to use Backtelconnect, which is our system that we have in place for you to make requests to changes to your I-20. And then we'll talk a little bit about settling into Stanford. This presentation can be found by going to bechtel.stanford.edu, that's our website, clicking on Coming to Stanford, and then clicking on Maintaining Legal Status Sessions. I will also be referencing our orientation schedule through this presentation, and so you'll be able to find that presentation by clicking under Fall Orientations, and then it'll bring you to our International Student Orientation page. At the time of this recording, a lot of those links haven't been updated for Fall 2021 orientation, and that's because we're still putting it together. As you can imagine, it's been very challenging this year to put orientations together as we're trying to figure out how much to do it virtually, if it's possible to do anything in person, and things like that. So we hope by the end of August that all those links will be updated for fall 2021 orientation and incoming information. Here at Stanford University, you'll be joining over 5,000 international students coming from 124 different countries. Every year, we welcome over 1,000 new international students to the university. And here at Stanford, we have more than 650 student-run groups, and 45 plus of those have an international focus. So those student-run groups is a great way to get yourself involved in a community, start building your own community here at Stanford University. And if you don't find a group that's of your particular interest, you're more than welcome to start your own student-run group. So let me introduce the Bechtel International Center next. The Bechtel International Center building, which you can see behind me here, my virtual background, is still currently closed. When that building reopens and we reopen to serving students physically in person, we'll make that announcement through a newsletter that we sent out and probably through our website. Just because the building is closed doesn't mean we're not working. All staff continue to work from home, including myself. And there are several ways that you can reach us for assistance. Through our general email, which is internationalstudents@stanford.edu. Our turnaround time for emails is about 4 to 5 business days. When you email us with your question or concern, please make sure to always include your CVIS ID number or your student ID number, preferably both. A lot of times we have to look at your CVIS record to provide you an accurate answer. And the easiest way for us to do that is if you've already provided your SEVIS ID number or Stanford ID. Otherwise, we may just have to respond asking for that information, and that delays our ability to get your questions answered. We also offer afternoon in-person advising via Zoom, and that's by appointment. That link is on this slide. Afternoon in-person advising via Zoom is Monday through Thursday from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. And the way that works is that the appointments open up the day before. So for example, if you wanted to schedule an appointment for Monday, those Monday afternoon appointments become available just after midnight on Sunday. And for Tuesday appointments, those become available Monday just after midnight, and so on and so forth. So if on Sunday you're trying to schedule an appointment for Wednesday because you're free on Wednesday, you wouldn't be able to do that, but you would be able to schedule an appointment for Monday. We do have group advising, and the nice part about group advising is that no appointment is necessary. Those sessions are offered Tuesday and Friday mornings at 10 a.m. You just click on the Zoom link and ask your question. Most of your questions are pretty general in nature anyway, so that's a great place to start if you need more immediate assistance. And if for some reason we have to dig down deep into your SEVIS record or student record, then we would refer you to getting access to an advisor for a more in-person kind of one-on-one session. Also, many of your questions can already be answered on our website. We have a plethora of information on our website. If you go to bechtel.stanford.edu, that's a great place to start. And then we also have a Facebook page and a YouTube channel. So make sure to visit those pages and give us a like, give us a view. Here at the Bechtel International Center, we offer a variety of student services. Beginning with this orientation, we will have a 2-week orientation starting on September 7th through September 17th as a way of introducing you to being a student at Stanford University and giving you some of the knowledge you need to help with your transition to living in the United States and in California. We advise on regulatory matters. Questions around enrollment, employment, travel, personal issues. So anything like that, you're more than welcome to come and talk to an advisor, or really about anything. You're more than welcome to always reach out to us for any kind of support. We will offer workshops throughout the academic year on topics relating to employment, tax information, things like that. We also bring in immigration attorneys who specialize in H-1B to talk about life after the F-1 or the J-1 student visa. So keep an eye out for announcements about those workshops. We have a newsletter that gets emailed out through international students at stanford.edu that goes out pretty much weekly with updates about important news and events relevant to international students. And then we have a variety of social programs, most of which will be virtual, continue to be virtual, but some in person too for students and spouses. At Bechtel, we are also here to help you, like I said, maintain your status. However, we are not federal law enforcement officials. So we are here to support you, not to get you in trouble. And the easiest way for us to be able to support you is to come with any questions that you might have to us about your immigration status or anything related to your immigration status. We do have reporting responsibilities to the US government that we have to make on your behalf. We have to report every quarter if you're enrolled full-time, or if you reduce your course load, meaning you've dropped classes and you're authorized to do so, we have to report that to the US government. Any changes that you might make as a student to your academic program have to get reported. Employment authorization, leave of absences, extensions, things of that nature. So we do have reporting obligations that we have to make to the US government on your behalf, and but we're here to support you, like I said, and not to get you in trouble. So let's talk about how to maintain your legal status. First, a warning. One of the easiest ways that we have found for international students to get themselves into trouble is to go to their friends or these online chat groups for immigration advice. We are here for you. We are here to support you. And so we do not want you going to your friends to talk about immigration advice. And one of the reasons why this is a bad idea is because your situation could be very different from a friend's situation or a situation that somebody describes through one of these group chats, because their CVIS record and their student status may be very different from yours. So even though you might be both dealing with, let's say, an employment authorization issue, you might not be getting the same answers. And so our best advice to you is to come and talk to us and not to your friends. I also want to let you know that this session will be offered live. We have a session before our scheduled orientation on August 24th at 9 a.m. And then we've got four live sessions scheduled through the 2-week orientation. And attending one of these sessions live is great because we take student questions. And so sometimes that changes how we explain one of these topics, or maybe even brings up information through a question that wouldn't get covered during this recorded session. So I would highly, highly, highly encourage you to attend one of these legal status sessions live, because you'll probably end up getting a different experience than just what you're watching here. You will also get a chance to maybe interact with one of our other international student advisors. So how do you maintain your legal status? You have to have a valid passport at all times. And what that means is you want your passport valid for at least 6 months into the future at all times. So if your passport is within 6 months of expiring, you will want to work with your home country's embassy here in the US or consulate to renew your passport. You have to maintain a full course load of study during the academic year. You can't be under-enrolled. You have to enroll in at least one in-person or hybrid course during the academic quarter. You have to report any changes that you might make to the Bechtel International Center, and we'll go over that in a little more detail in another slide or two. You also have to follow all on-campus and off-campus employment regulations and restrictions. So you are here on a student visa. When you entered the US on an F1 or a J1 student visa, you told the US government you're coming here to study. And so employment is heavily regulated for the student visa. If for some reason you won't be able to complete your studies or graduate by the end of the program end date on your I-20 or DS 2019, you'll need to file a timely extension. And for J1 visa holders, you have to maintain health insurance for yourselves and your dependent. So this is a list of some common changes that students report while they are students at Stanford University. Those changes can include changes to names. This is more likely for master's or PhD students who might get married. Change in citizenship, change in address. That is the most frequent change. That change you'll be making in Access. Change of degree level, if you're going from a bachelor's to a master's, or master's to PhD, or sometimes PhD to a master's degree. If you've decided to change your major, you have to let us know your graduation date. Again, you'd probably need an extension. If you're transferring to another school, if your source of funding changes, or if your immigration documents have been stolen or lost. Any of those changes you have to make within 10 days by notifying Bechtel. When you do update your address and Access, you want to make sure that the box is checked for CVIS US address. You also need to make sure that that first line in access, the one that reads 655 Escondido Road, starts with a number. So sometimes students live on campus or even off-campus housing where an apartment complex has a name, and they'll start the address with the name of the residence or the name of the apartment complex. That information will not get uploaded to SEVIS. So you have to start your address with the street address, and what that means is the number. So in this case, this particular student's address is at 655 Escondido Road. Again, if you start the address with a name, that information will not get uploaded to SEVIS. And make sure you hit the save button. So what does full-time enrollment mean at Stanford University? That means for graduate students, you're enrolled in at least 8 units. For undergraduate students, you're enrolled in at least 12 units. For students, for you as new incoming students in F1 or J1 status, I had mentioned previously in the other slide that you are required to enroll in at least one in-person or hybrid course. That's a course that has an in-person component. All your remaining courses from the US immigration perspective can be online, although I believe the university is offering very few online options this quarter because the expectation was for all of our students to return. Prior to COVID-19, it was actually reversed, where all your classes had to be in person and you could have one online course count towards this full course of study. So now with COVID-19 and until the guidance changes, you would be expected for the fall 2021 quarter and all the quarters after to be enrolled in at least one in-person or hybrid course. If the US immigration changes that guidance, we will of course notify you of that change and the new requirements. The exceptions to full-time enrollment is if it's your final quarter of study, the US government doesn't require that you enroll in 8 or 12 units if all you have left is just a couple units to take. Or if you have a medical reason approved by the Office of Accessible Education, OAE. And that can be both for a physical medical reason or a mental health medical reason. If you go to our enrollment page on our website, you'll see a video there talking about doing a medical reduced course load for mental health reasons. The only thing with that is you're only given 12 months of a medical reduced course load. And so we put those on quarter by quarter and only as needed. If you use up all those 12 months, you no longer are able to do a medical reduced course load and you would be expected to be enrolled full-time. So again, full-time for graduate students is 8 units. Full-time for undergraduate students is 12 units. If you are at a point in the quarter where your units are not manageable and you're thinking about dropping a course, you have to come and talk to us, probably through Zoom, before you drop a class. Dropping a class is one of the easier ways for international students to violate their immigration status. And so then it becomes a mad dash for you to try to enroll back into those units. Otherwise, we have to terminate your I-20 and you have to depart the US, which nobody wants. And so again, come and talk to us. There might be solutions that you haven't thought about before dropping a class. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what employment looks like under the F or J statuses. And here I want to make you aware that we have 2 different sessions that will be held twice during orientation. One that specifically deals with, in more detail, with F1, J1 employment in the US. Those sessions are currently scheduled for Wednesday, September 8th at 11 a.m. and another session on Tuesday, September 14th at 11 a.m. We also have a preparing for employment session that's presented by Beam, which is our career services department here at Stanford. They follow our F1, J1 employment in the US Wednesday, September 8th at 1 p.m. and Tuesday, September 14th at 1 p.m. So let's start with a little bit about employment for F1 students. For F1 students, on-campus employment does not have to be reported. During an academic quarter, you can't work more than 20 hours a week on campus. During the breaks between quarters and during the summer, you can work 40 hours or more for on-campus employment, and no authorization is needed for that. You're also immediately eligible for working on campus. If you want to work off campus, or and by off campus, it doesn't mean that you're actually leaving the university to work. If there's like a company or agency that wants to hire you to work remotely from campus, that's also considered on campus, off campus. So any work that you do with an outside agency that's not Stanford University will most likely require off-campus work authorization. While you're a student, that work authorization is known as Curricular Practical Training, or CPT. To be eligible for CPT, you have to have been enrolled in F1 status for 3 quarters. And for undergraduate students, you have to have declared a major. And that's because while you're a student in F1 status, any work that you do has to be related to your field of study. And so the US government doesn't allow you just to take some random jobs off campus to work. The job has to be related to your field of study. For graduate students, you are also required to have been enrolled for 3 quarters in F1 status. However, there are a couple of programs out there that require immediate participation in an internship, and that's because it is a requirement of the degree. So you can't graduate without doing an internship. It's built into one of your degree requirements. For that reason, you may be eligible sooner for CPT. For, I would say, 98% of the rest of our students, the way that the US government, or the way that you fulfill the US government's requirement that the off-campus employment be an integral part of your education is through enrolling in a CPT course. So more than likely, your department has a CPT course in which you would have to enroll in to be eligible for the CPT authorization. Again, we're going to go into way more detail about CPT during the F1J1 employment in the US sessions during our orientation. And then there's also the work authorization called Optional Practical Training, or OPT. That's something that you will want to save and use because it allows you to stay and work in the US for 12 months after graduation. So again, you'll be using the CPT work authorization while you're a student, and using OPT for after graduation. Just a quick note about that. CPT does not allow for self-employment. You can't be trying to start your own company under CPT. OPT, a version of OPT does allow for that. It's called pre-completion OPT, but it does eat away from those 12 months that you can use to stay and work in the US after graduation. And once again, I would highly encourage you to attend the F1J1 employment in the US, where we'll go into more details about the CPT and OPT work authorizations. For J1 students, on-campus employment does require authorization. You have to go into Backtelconnect and request on-campus authorization. Same rules and regulations apply in terms of US immigration, or from the US immigration perspective, in that you can't work more than 20 hours a week while school is in session, but you can work full-time more than 20 hours a week during the breaks between quarters and during the summer. You are also eligible immediately for on-campus employment. The off-campus work authorization is called academic training for J1 students. And so that is also available to you immediately after entry in J1 status. And you would request that authorization from Bechtel. Just a couple more warnings about employment while you're in F1 and J1 status. You should not be accepting off-campus employment without official permission. So you should come and talk to one of us, one of the international student advisors, if you're thinking about off-campus employment, so we can help you figure out how to do that legally. And then there's a bunch of stuff that's kind of easy access to employment, things like driving for Uber or Lyft, or renting out your car, or if you have an app or a YouTube channel that you've developed, monetizing that app. Those are some of the easier things to do in terms of employment. Those would not apply to you as an international student, and that type of employment would be viewed as a violation of your immigration status. So you want to stay away from those. Also, a lot of our students are interested in creating or incorporating a startup. That is also heavily regulated. And I would highly encourage you, again, to attend the employment session to learn how something like that might be possible, or what is legal to do in that realm of starting a company. All right, so we're going to look at your immigration documents now. We're going to look at your passport, your I-20 or DS-2019, and your I-94. This is a good chance to pause the video and get those documents so that we can go over it together. And I'm going to take a sip of water. All right. So first thing you should know is you must keep your immigration documents safe and dry. So storing your documents in your car or leaving them in your car, especially if you're going to go to San Francisco, is not a good idea. That's not a way of keeping your documents safe. Might be a way of keeping them dry, but not safe. You want to make a photocopy of all your immigration documents and keep those copies in a safe place in case something does happen to your original documents. That way you know exactly what you have and what you need to replace. Some students choose to scan their documents and keep them electronically. That's fine too. And your immigration documents, what are those? Those will be your valid passport, your I-20 if you're an F1 student, or your DS-2019 if you're a J1 student, your I-94 arrival record, and I'll explain in a minute if you haven't been able to access that, how to do that. And what the I-94 is, because that I-94 information, your entry record, changes every time you enter the US. So it's a good idea to print that out and have a copy of that in your hand or saved. And then a visa stamp that's stamped into your passport. So all of our international students, except those coming from Canada or Canadian citizens, will have a visa stamped into their passport. That is different than the admission stamp that you get by a CBP officer at the port of entry, but the actual visa that's stamped into your passport. So your I-20 will have your CVIS ID number at the top. This is for students in F1 status. It'll have your bio information at the top, and then your school information, your program of study, so your educational level, what you're studying, the start of your program, which should be September 20th, 2021, and then your program end date. And what you want to verify is that all that information is correct. So your bio information is correct. The school information, obviously, should say Stanford University. You want to check that your educational level is correct, your major is correct if you have one, and your program start and end dates are correct. You want to be aware of your program end date again, because what keeps you in status is not until when your visa is valid, but it's you maintaining your status and you not reaching the program end date on your I-20. So be aware of that program end date on your I-20. This is what a DS 2019 looks like for our J1 students. Again, the bio information will be at the top. Your CVIS ID number will be in the top right corner. It will also tell you where the sponsor, which should be Stanford University, what you're doing at Stanford, and your educational level. It has your start and end dates as well. So you want to verify that all that information is correct. This is what the visa stamp in your passport will look like for everybody except, again, for Canadian citizens. Your visa type should be either F1 or J1. Your entries will either be M for multiple entries, which means that you can use that visa to enter the US until it expires as many times as you need. And then if it says S, it means that your visa was only stamped for a single entry. And that means you can only use it once to come into the US. And if you depart, you would have to get a new visa to come back in. And your visa will also have an expiration date. So you can remain in the US even past the expiration date on a visa. Again, as long as you're maintaining your F1 or J1 status and you haven't reached the program end date on your I-20 or your DS 2019. So we have a number of students whose visas have expired. And because they haven't departed the US, they've been maintaining their status. They haven't reached the program end date on the I-20 or the DS 2019. They're fine. However, when they depart the US, because their visa has expired, they'll have to renew their visa or apply for a new F1 or J1 visa. So again, you don't have to worry if you're close to your visa expiring or it has expired and you're in the US, that's okay as long as you're maintaining your status and you haven't reached the program end date on your I-20 or your DS 2019. This is what the admission stamp looks like. So when you're at the port of entry and the CBP stamps your passport, it'll have the date of your entry, your class of admission, either F1 or J1, and then the until date will say D/S, which means duration of status. And I'll go over what duration of status means in a few slides. And then this is your I94 printout. This is a record of your entry into the US. You can access it through i94.cbp.dhs.gov. It'll ask you for your passport information, your name, and your birth date, and then it'll bring up this information. You'll have a admission I94 record number. That number changes every time you enter the US. That is not a static number, so that number will change. It'll have your class of admission, either F1 or J1, and then the admit until date of D/S or duration of status. You must verify that you were entered in the US in F1 or J1 status. If your I94 says anything else, B1 or any other immigration status, you cannot study at Stanford until that gets corrected. So it's really, really important that you've taken a look at this I94, printed it out, and verified that you were entered in as a student, either F1 or J1. We will also ask you to upload this I94 arrival record on a Qualtrics form, which we'll be emailing the link out towards the end of August. And so this is actually one of the requirements that will allow us to remove the enrollment hold on your student record to allow you to register for classes for the fall quarter. So duration of status, D/S, what does that mean? That means that you're allowed to remain in the US while you are in F1 status or J1 status and maintaining your status. And basically it reflects the timeline of you as a student in F1 status. So the first period of time that you're here in the US will be for your academic studies. It'll be your program start date, and then your conferral date of your degree, which would be the program end date of your I-20. Following your degree conferral, if you've decided not to pursue the optional practical training and stay and work in the US, you'll have a 60-day grace period, which was time given to you to kind of get yourself together and depart the US or transfer to another school or change immigration statuses. But your status ends within 60 days if you haven't applied and will not be using the OPT work authorization. If you do decide to apply for OPT and stay and work in the US, you have 12 months of OPT, assuming you didn't use any under pre-completion OPT. Once you've completed that OPT and you're not going to do the STEM extension, which would allow you for 2 more years of employment if you're STEM eligible, then you have a 60-day grace period to, again, get yourself together to depart the US. That's if you successfully complete the OPT. If you end your OPT early, then your timeline shortens and you have to leave the US within 15 days. For J1 students, again, you have your first period under the J1 status is your academic studies. So you have a start date and the degree conferral date. It will be your end date on your J1 DS 2019. But instead of a 60-day grace period, J1 students are given a 30-day grace period. And it's the same idea that it's the time given to you to get yourself together and depart the US. That is unless you are using your academic training, which is your work authorization, allowing you to stay and work in the US. It says 18 months, but that academic training period of time can vary for J students depending on the length of the program. It can't be more than 18 months unless you're a PhD student, and then you're given an additional 18 months on top of those. So once you've used up your academic training and you've completed it successfully, then you're given a 30-day grace period at the end of that academic training. All right, so what does travel and entry into the US look like now that you've entered the US in F1 or J1 status? For domestic travel, travel within the US, we suggest traveling with your valid passport, also with your I-20 or your DS 2019 and a printout of your electronic I94 record. We don't suggest that you travel only with your California driver's license. So this is true. Students will often ask, like, well, when should I be carrying these documents? I don't know if I want to have the originals if I'm just going to San Francisco or Santa Cruz or Santa Barbara or Lake Tahoe to go skiing. It's something of a judgment call. You definitely want to take copies of those with you, maybe not the originals. If you're going to be flying, you definitely want to have the originals with you. Or if you're going to go anywhere near the southern or northern border where you might be encountering checkpoints. Some of those checkpoints can be within 100 miles or so of the US border. So you might be going down to San Diego and you might encounter a checkpoint somewhere down there. So again, if you're going to be traveling south or north and you're going to be getting, within a couple 100 miles of the US border, then you'll want to have those original documents with you. Otherwise, if you're traveling around the Bay Area, you definitely want to have copies of those on you, and maybe not the originals. For international travel, you definitely need the originals. It'll be your valid passport, your I-20 or your DS 2019 signed for travel, and that travel signature is valid. So you'll have to check on that, and we'll go over in a minute what that means. Your valid F1 or J1 visa. And then we recommend that you also travel with a copy of your transcript or confirmation of your enrollment, and even your financial documents that you use for proof of funding. You'll probably not be asked for those, but those you would just have in your backpack or your travel carry-on in case you get placed in the secondary, and you can provide that documentation. That's pretty rare, though. And again, I'm referring to the recommended documents in that scenario. Travel signature on an I-20, it can be found on the second page towards the bottom. those travel signatures are valid for a year while you're an active student from the date that it was issued. So in this case, that year is not valid. But let's say it was signed in March 24 of 2021. That means that travel signature is good until March of 2022. So for that student, if they're able to travel home during the winter, which is kind of questionable right now with the COVID-19 Delta variant, the student would not need a new travel signature. The DS 2019 travel signature is on the first page, and that signature is also valid for 1 year. But the most important takeaway from this slide is to make sure that your travel signature will be valid for reentry before you depart the US. And then if you need a new travel signature at this time, you would be requesting that through Backtelconnect and requesting an I-20 or DS 2019 reprint. All right. So what if your visa has expired or is close to expiring and you need to renew your visa? First of all, you should never be entering the US in anything but F or J status now that you've entered the US in F or J status. Entering the US in any other immigration status will end your F or J status. And that for F students would have a huge implication because it resets your eligibility for CPT or OPT, as well as other issues too. So now that you've entered the US in F or J status, you should never be entering in anything but F or J status. Because the visa is a travel document, it can't be renewed from within the US. You'll be renewing that at a US embassy or consulate from your home country. And we advise doing it from your home country because it's easier for the US immigration to do background checks from the US embassy or consulate in your home country. And also, if for some reason you get stuck in administrative processing, for example, that you're stuck in your home country. You have to have a valid visa for reentry to the US after international travel, as we've already talked about. And a warning, so here in the US, the drinking age is 21 years old. We have very strict rules around laws around driving after having an alcoholic beverage or even driving if you happen to have used marijuana. If for some reason you get pulled over by an officer and you've had something to drink, then and you get cited or arrested or ticketed for a DUI, then that is an automatic revocation of your student visa. Doesn't mean that you have to depart the US, but what it does mean is that when you do depart the US, you have to apply for a new visa. And this time you have to go through something called a panel physician evaluation. And so that just means it's going to take that much longer to get your visa in order for you to be able to return, and it gets more complicated. So when I talk about driving under the influence, that doesn't just mean your car. It also means a bicycle, a skateboard. You can get stopped by a police officer if you're on your bicycle or on a skateboard even. And if you've had something to drink, you're liable to get ticketed and possibly even arrested. And again, then that would cause an automatic revocation of your visa. So you can walk, you can Uber, you can Lyft. There's a lot of different ways now to travel around. If you know you're going to go out for dinner and have a couple glasses of wine or go to a party or something like that. Also, just a note about marijuana, it is legal in California. It is not legal under federal law. So as an international student, you are obligated to the federal law. And that means that if you were to admit to using marijuana or get cited for using marijuana in the wrong place, then that too is also going to give you problems for entry into the US and for your immigration status. Also, It's pretty strict. So if for some reason you're at the port of entry and you get asked about investing in companies and you talk about you've invested in some Canadian marijuana company, for example, that could also be a reason to deny you entry into the US. So you just want to be careful about that. And you'll want to visit the Stanford website, alcohol.stanford.edu, for more about the rules and regulations of alcohol use on campus. So to review, never enter the US on anything but an F or J visa status while you're studying at Stanford or during your OPT or academic training after you've graduated. You want to make sure your passport is valid, again, at least 6 months in advance at all times, but especially when entering the US. And you should always plan ahead before you depart the US, especially these days during COVID-19. You definitely want to come and talk to us maybe before or while you're considering international travel plans. And you definitely want to make sure that you have a valid travel signature on your I-20 or DS 2019 before you leave. And if your visa has expired, you will need to renew that visa, and we advise to do that from your home country before attempting re-entry to the US. And if we were live and in person, I would ask you if you had any questions. So Backtelconnect is a brand new system that we implemented over the course of this year to make requesting changes to your I-20 or your DS 2019 easier. Just a couple tips of using Backtelconnect. You can access it through our website or directly through backtelconnect.stanford.edu. You will use Backtelconnect to request changes to your I-20, so extension requests, changing degree levels, if you've had a funding change, if you're adding a dependent, or if you've taken a leave of absence and you need an initial I-20 to return or reactivation of your I-20. You can also use Backtelconnect to request letters to the DMV, to the Social Security Office. You would also be requesting through Backtelconnect the I-20 or DS 2019 reprints. And any employment authorizations will also be requested through Backtelconnect. You'll need to note as well that if you're making a request that requires an academic advisor's approval or student services administrator's approval, then your submission is not automatically sent to Bechtel once the approver approves it. You actually have to go back in and finish submitting that request. So you send it off electronically through Backtelconnect to your academic advisor to approve your request. That person approves it. You then have to go back into Backtelconnect and finish submitting the request. If you don't, it just sits there and we don't see it. To make a new request, you click on a drop-down menu and select the request that you want to make. If you have started a request and you want to return to it and finish submitting it, then you just click on the box to check requests, continue my request in progress. All right, so let's talk a little bit about life at Stanford. We have, the first thing I'm going to talk about is the Stanford's Honor Code. I'm going to touch upon this briefly because we have a number of sessions during our orientation that help you with this Honor Code. The first I want to highlight is Thriving at Stanford. It'll be on Wednesday, September 8th at 3 p.m. That session will go into the things that you can do to remain engaged and healthy and pursuing your studies at Stanford. We have a session on engaging in healthy relationships at Stanford on Thursday, September 9th at 11 a.m. That goes into things like Title IX and some of the power dynamics in relationships here on campus that could preclude having relationships. And so I would highly encourage you to attend that one. It's probably one of the sessions I advise students most to attend. We have a culture of the U.S. classroom, which will actually go into detail on the honor code, as well as what to expect from a classroom experience at Stanford. That's on Friday, September 10 at 10 a.m. And then a Stanford as we see it, which is our student panel. And we had a great student panel last year. That'll be on Friday, September 10th at noon. Those days and times are tentative as of the recording of this maintaining legal status session. So please seek out our orientation schedule online that I talked about at the very beginning of this presentation for the most up-to-date sessions, day and times. The Stanford Honor Code is very important because it is how your academic and social life, it's the rules and regulations and the policies and the guidance around how you pursue your academic and social life here at Stanford. Specifically, it's broken down into two parts, the academic standard and the fundamental standard. The academic standard deals with, from the title, you can tell it deals with academics. So how you're progressing towards a degree, issues around plagiarism, stuff like unpermitted collaboration and cheating. And the fundamental standard has to do with more of the behavioral type of expectations that you as Stanford University students have, something like harassing speech. So this is a big issue for our international students, especially around things like plagiarism and unpermitted collaboration, because you may, if you're not aware, those are easy to violate. And so they're very kind of specific and nuanced. And so I would highly encourage you to attend the Culture of the U.S. Classroom to get more information about those and to visit the community standards page that's linked on this slide to read more about it. Because what happens is that when an international student violates, actually any student violates the academic standard through, let's say, an unpermitted collaboration, that means that there's a penalty. And sometimes that penalty could be you can't enroll full time or you have to take a quarter off. That, of course, has an impact on your immigration status because you can't maintain your status. You can't enroll full time or you can't enroll at all. And so you want to be really clear and understand what those expectations are under the academic standard and the fundamental standard, so that you don't violate those or are perceived to violate them, so that you don't have that additional consequence to your immigration status. Social Security number and something called an ITIN, an individual taxpayer identification number. We have two sessions that go into more detail about those and how to obtain those. That information will be provided to you during the F1 J1 employment in the US session. Again, those sessions will be held on Wednesday, September 8th at 11 a.m. and Tuesday, September 14th at 11 a.m. We also have a web page dedicated to obtaining a Social Security number as well as an ITIN. So both of these are numbers that are used to identify you for tax purposes by the US government if you have taxable income. An ITIN is a temporary number. Those are for students who are not eligible but have some kind of taxable income. So mostly it'd be for PhD students or even undergrads who might be getting some kind of financial aid. If the financial aid or the fellowship covers more than just the cost of your tuition, then that additional money can be considered taxable by the US government. If you're not eligible for an SSN, for a Social Security number, then you would have to apply for this ITIN. It is a long and complicated process. So if you know that you're going to need this ITIN, you should start that application process in November, the latest, so that way you have that number in time to file for taxes in April, which is our traditional filing period. If you're eligible for a Social Security number, you should get one. That number is yours for the rest of your life. If you already have a Social Security number, you don't need one. You retain that one for your lifetime. To be eligible for a Social Security number, you have to have a job offer. So for students working on campus, that's a great way to get a Social Security number. So you would just visit our Social Security page. Let's say you get a job offer on campus, and look at the template letter you have to get from your on-campus employer, and then request a letter from us. And there's a couple other documents you bring to the Social Security office, and you get that Social Security number. Social Security office appointments are tough to get right now because you have to apply in person at one of their offices. I believe they're still doing those at the time of this recording by appointment only. And so that can be a challenge to get. But between the two, the ITIN and the Social Security number, if you know that you're going to need to file taxes, then you want to try to get a job offer to get that Social Security number. California driver's license. So we have 2 sessions that deal with obtaining an automobile and car insurance. Having a car in California is not the cheapest thing. Buying a car you might be able to find great deals for buying a used car, but then you have the additional costs of car insurance that you have to pay into, and gas too. Gas is not cheap here. But we have professionals to come and talk to you about that. We have 2 sessions. One is scheduled for Thursday, September 9 at 3 p.m. and another session on Thursday, September 16th at 9 a.m. for our early rising students. You can find more detailed information about obtaining a California driver's license on our website as well. We have a web page about driver's license. Here's the thing. California law enforcement considers you a resident of California for driving purposes if you're here for 10 days or more. And what that means is that if you know you're going to be driving routinely, you know that you want a car or need a car, then you should go get a California driver's license. You can, if you have a driver's license from your home country, use that for a little while. But if you get stopped for a traffic violation, let's say you're going too fast or you didn't stop completely at a stop sign, and all you have is your home country's driver's license, and then the officer learns that you're a Stanford University student, you've been here since September, you could face an additional ticket or additional fine for not having a California driver's license. To obtain a California driver's license, you'll need to complete a driver's license application. There is a field there to fill in a Social Security number. You do not need a Social Security number to apply for a California driver's license. You have to go to the DMV office, and I think you do need to schedule an appointment now to do that. I don't think they're doing walk-ins anymore for those. You'll have to bring 2 documents proving California residency. One of those can be a letter from the Bechtel International Center, and another one most students will get from their US bank documenting their home address. You'll have to pass a vision and knowledge written examination, and then also most likely a driving test. Here's the thing. You can't go to the DMV until we activate your CVIS record. And by that, I mean that by activating your CVIS record, we're telling the US government that you've entered the US and started your studies at Stanford. That won't take place until 30 days after the quarter has started. So the earliest that you can apply for the driver's license won't be until the end of October, because the quarter starts on September 20th. So I would suggest not making that request for the DMV letter now, but waiting beginning of October to make that request. A little information about taxes. We traditionally file taxes in the United States on or about April 15th. So if you have any taxable income, like I talked about, if you had a scholarship or financial aid that covers more than just tuition, some of that might be taxable. If you have on-campus employment, that income would also be taxable. So you'll need to file taxes. We have tax webinars by a tax professional. Those are usually held in March. And then we also purchase a tax software in which you can use online to help you file your federal income tax. We file in the United States, we file both a federal income tax and a state income tax. So you would have to do both those for the US government, the federal US government, and also the California state government. If you didn't earn any income or didn't have any taxable income, so you don't have to file taxes, you still have to do this Form 8843 to the IRS, and that's due on or about June 15th. So again, if you're filing taxes, you're doing that as well as the Form 8843. If you don't have to file taxes, you still have to mail your Form 8843 to the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS. And finally, a note about safety here at Stanford University while you're a student. We have 2 sessions that talk about this specifically and introduce you to our public safety department here on campus. It's titled Living Safely at Stanford, and it's being held on Tuesday, September 7th at 3 p.m. and Wednesday, September 15th at noon. Again, with the caveat that these days and times at the time of this recording are tentative, so please take a look at our schedule online when that becomes available for the most up-to-date day and time scheduling of that session. You want to make sure to protect yourself while you're a student at Stanford. Be aware of your surroundings, the routes that you're taking, especially if you have classes in the evening or you're going to dinner in the evening to pick up your food or whatnot. You want to be aware of how to contact public safety for help. Again, they'll go over that during the Living Safely at Stanford session. You want to make sure that you keep your immigration documents safe. There's also a lot of scammers out there from outside the US trying to take advantage of you as an international student. And they're really good. This is their job, to separate you from your money. So you should be aware that it can look legitimate. So you might get a phone call on your phone and it might even say USCIS is calling you, or the FBI or the IRS. And they'll start putting pressure on you that you did something wrong, that you might not even be aware that you did something wrong, but that you can resolve the issue by going to Walmart or CVS and buying a gift card and reading that gift card number over the phone to them. No agency of the US government will call and demand money from you over the phone to resolve your issue. So if for some reason you did have a violation, they won't be calling you and demanding that you pay over the phone to get this issue resolved. It is a scam. Some of these scams are so good. I had a student from China who came to my office with the professor, with the scammer on the phone, and neither the professor or I could convince the student that it was a scam. The scammer spoke in Chinese to the student and was threatening the student's family in China that they would be arrested, or that the student would be arrested as soon as he entered China for this violation. Eventually, I just asked for the phone and I told the person I was aware that this was a scam. And they threatened me and then hung up the phone. So again, these scammers are professionals. Their job is to separate you from your money. If you get an inkling that something is wrong, hang up immediately, report it to public safety, and let us know about it so that way we can let other international students know. And also, just to let you know too, that you are now living in a beautiful part of the world. We pay very much for our weather here in California in the San Francisco Bay Area. It's really nice. Around here, there's a lot to do on campus. There's a lot to do off campus. I would highly encourage you to get to know the San Francisco Bay Area. One of my favorite places is Mount Diablo, which is just east of us, maybe an hour, hour and a half from here. It's our tallest peak. You can see the entire Bay Area from San Francisco to San Jose from that peak. And then if you look behind you while you're up there, you can also see the high rises of Sacramento. Sacramento is about a 2-hour drive from here. So you can see 2 hours from here up on Mount Diablo. Every couple of years, they try to change the name Mount Diablo because Diablo in Spanish means the devil. I actually should know why it was called Mount Diablo, but I don't. So that's one of my favorite places. I also love Monterey. It's just beautiful down there. Some people compare it to the French Riviera, but if you can afford a house down in Monterey, then you could probably compare it to the French Riviera. It's a beautiful part. Yeah, so, and then of course there's Muir Woods, which is really tough to get into north of San Francisco, but you can find spots to hike around Muir Woods. That doesn't require you signing in over there. And then, if you want to go skiing and it's the winter, you can, in a couple hours, you're in the snow. You just drive towards Lake Tahoe, go east. So there you have it. That is the Maintaining Legal Status session. I do hope to see you live. If not for this session, then for some of our other sessions during orientation. There's a lot of good information that you can get over the course of those 2 weeks. What I didn't talk about are some of the social activities that we have planned during the 2-week orientation. So it's not just going to be information. We'll have sessions for you to get to know each other, to get to know some of our professors here at campus, and to help you start thinking about your life while you're a student outside of academics, which is will be as important for you to maintain your balance as anything else. All right, so take care and have a beautiful day wherever you are. Another U2 reference. And I hope to see you soon. Bye now.